Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon, everyone. Our panel discussion on the topic of Nakba genocide, indifference. As we know, everybody knows there is a genocide going on in Gaza. It has cost probably minimum of 60,000 lives so far from the period of October 7, 2023 to now. We do not know how many are the real death. Some say it's probably more 400,000. But problem is people aware of this. Actually, people also aware or not that these killings have actually started long time ago. It didn't started on October 7, it started a long time ago, and actually the land of Palestine has been colonized for decades, and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of lives have been lost. Me personally, I was so ignorant when I was a student last time at the university. I didn't even know that Palestine existed. So when a friend of mine said to me that he came from Palestine, I thought he was joking. That shows how ignorant I was. And that was because of the education system and places in Indonesia didn't teach us about the history of Palestine, the history of colonization of Palestine. So what we are going to discuss today is this topic of whether we have a situation problem of ignorance or a problem of indifference, because now the news have been talking about genocide many for more than 2 years, almost 2 years now, and no action has been taken to really stop the killings, even as they are going on today. And we have with us to discuss this issue 3 panelists: Dr. Muhammad Nakba, who is the research fellow at the Hashim Center for Palestine Studies, and we have Dr. Sharif Shamala, the CEO of Youth Foundation Malaysia, and we have Brother Khalid Jiman, who is going to join us shortly, who is the fellow at the Palestine Center of Excellence. So I want to therefore pose this question to our panelists, all of them. Based on your interaction with Muslims and non-Muslims alike, do you believe that there are still ignorant people who are ignorant like I was before about the history of Palestine, including the Nakba, which happened? What is your impression? So we'll start with you, Dr. Shan. Good. Question. Do you believe people are still ignorant? Many people are still ignorant or not about the Nakba and history of Palestine, like I was before.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الأمين. أما بعد. Thank you very much, Prof, for inviting me to this forum, which will discuss a very important issue, especially in these days of genocide or live genocide we live. Before we start, I should ask everyone to read Surah Al-Fatiha on arwah of our late sister Shahida or Shida, who was the secretary of Viva Palestine Malaysia. I know her since 13 years. She always was a great contributor and supporter for Palestine, very active. So let's start with reading Al-Fatiha. For the Nakba, yes, I do believe that there is ignorance in the topic of Nakba or the dangers of a Nakba. And I believe this ignorance depends on the situations and the events when the Israeli continue their crimes against the Palestinian people and against the humanity. People become more aware about the history of Palestine and the roots of the occupation in Palestine and the roots of the Palestinian cause in Palestine. And I believe that Israel was betting on one thing, that the people will forget the Nakba. After they practiced the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people from their land, especially in 1948, Israel thought those refugees, the Palestinian refugees, which at that time were around 700,000 of the Palestinians became refugees, they will forget their land, their cause, and this will strengthen the Zionist narrative about the Palestinian cause. But I cannot say likely, but the nature, the brutal nature of the Israeli occupation and the Zionist movement prevent the total ignorance of the Nakba. Because every time when Israel commit a massacre, commit genocide, commit expansion wars against the neighbors, this always brings back the Nakba memory to the generations, to the people. So it depends. This is number one. Number two, there is a fact we should be aware about, that Israel also have stolen the land and also tried to fabricate the history to wipe the civilization of the Palestinian people. We can say cultural fabrication. For example, even the Palestinian folklore, the Palestinian customs, the Palestinian traditions, they stole also, and they tried to hide. And I remember 2 years or 3 years ago, there was a conference, and I presented a paper on how Israel imprisoned the Palestinian culture. And we can say Israel not only imprisoned the Palestinian culture, no, they also try to wipe the Palestinian culture. For example, the Palestinian food, they steal. The Palestinian clothes, they steal. I mean, physically and traditionally, they now say the hummus is a great Israeli food, a great Israeli meal. This is silly, but it can work in other environments with people who are not involved in the Palestinian cause can buy and they can sell these rubbish fabrications. And if we return back to the Nakba itself, and if we bring the history of the Nakba since maybe November 1947, when the Israelis started the war against the Palestinians, until maybe the May 1948, when Israel announced the state of Israel, we find the Israeli gangsters and militias used to loot the Palestinian physical heritage, like books, manuscripts, carpets, handmade antiques, even the daily life appliances that Palestinians used to use. They so looked at all these things. So, in conclusion, yes, there is ignorance, but also there is a struggle and another battle that the Palestinian people and all activists try to expose the real history of Palestine. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. This question of whether there is still ignorance among people about the history of Palestine, Nakba, etc.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for this fruitful and timely question. Yes, indeed, I think absolutely there is still widespread ignorance of intentional and innocent of Palestine and the Nakba. And even among most educated people, this is largely due to the history of Israeli and Palestine, how the Israeli history is written. And when they start writing the history of what they call the Israeli state, they try to censor anything related to Palestine, the Palestinian history. And they start censoring and deliberately erasing the Palestinian history. So the colonial narrative has painted such kind of Zionist occupation as a conflict or dispute among two people, rather than what is truly is, which is a settler colonial project and ongoing ethnic cleansing for the Palestinians. Since 1948, there are thousands of people who used to leave and flee their homes, their houses being stolen, their land being stolen. And unfortunately, during that time, none of the Western media focused on the situation of the Palestinian people. So they were erased, they were censored, and even the narrative of the Palestinian in the social media were not exposed because Israel was deliberately, and the Zionist lobby was deliberately erasing the Palestinian narrative from the social media, not able to post anything related to Palestine. And they were only focusing about talking about the conflict and the dispute between Palestinian, some of the Palestinian and the Israeli army. So in that time, most of the population start getting aware and start understanding there is nothing for Palestine because they never read in the history anything about Palestine. They always read in the history some Palestinian people. There is no state, only Palestinian people. So that means there doesn't have any state, it doesn't have any country. Because of that, as the Prof mentioned earlier, he never heard about something called Palestine state or Palestine at the time, because it was a kind of a ongoing colonial erasure of the Palestinian narrative, the Palestinian history in the social media. And it was deliberately censored for the term of media, because Palestine was censored in most of the media. Even some of the Arab nations were not allowed to speak about Palestine or to have any kind of interaction or communication with the Palestinian in public in the social media during that time. But nowadays the situation has changed. So regarding the ignorance of Palestine, yes, I believe so. As I mentioned, there is still widespread ignorance, could be innocent ignorance, or could be intentional ignorance, because the people, they intentionally know about Palestine, but they just want to be indifferent. I have even met some students, educators, and even diplomats who had no idea about what is Palestine, and who really believe that Palestine was created in 1967. They thought Palestine was created in 1967 because they never heard anything about Palestine, and even from the Palestinian official, they keep repeatedly listening and hearing Palestinian official talking about the border of 1967. They never heard anything before that. So they thought Palestine was created in 1967 or something later. This kind of ignorance is a product of systematic disinformation in the mainstream media and also in the educational system, especially in the global north. And nowadays, after 2022 and the current genocide, we can see there is huge trend, huge shift in the media of covering the Palestinian cause. This is for several reasons. Maybe we are going, I'm going to discuss that and to elaborate more about that during my presentation in our English.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad. Now, I want to invite Wijiman to answer the question of this question and discussing which is about ignorance of Nakba in Palestine. I remember there was a program many years ago. There was an interview of a very famous journalist, White House journalist. She's actually a Christian Arab. And then somebody asked her, and how do we solve the problem in Palestine? Sorry, Palestine conflict. And she said, it's very easy. Ask them all to go back to Europe. That's what she said, right? And then people were puzzled. They didn't know what was coming about. Because they didn't know the history that the Zionists actually came from Europe. So there was Wagner. That's very ignorant, obviously. So now I want to ask Brother Khalid, do you agree that is there still ignorance or not in the society about Nakba Palestine?
Alright, Prof. Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Prof asked and shared his position in whereby in 1980s there's people don't know about Palestine. But I think after almost 40 years now, majority from my interaction with our Malaysian, either Muslim or non-Muslims, they are more or less know about Palestine. They heard about Palestine. And they know there is something going on over there, they struggle with that. But they might not necessarily know in details about events like Nakba, Naxal, Intifada, but they heard about it. Some might choose not to delve further into the issues, but some do. I think because of the continuous information that we get from the news, and we know nowadays social media has played a part in giving people exposure on the issues. And from my interaction with I would believe my limited interaction, because I'm only involved with this advocacy work on Palestine since 2010, so about 15 years. But from these limited interactions, I would say more people know about Palestine now than. But of course, we're facing like Brother Dr. Akkad mentioned just now about disinformation. So there are a lot of information now. Before there's less information, now there's more information. But this information has been, mixed with disinformation from Israel, and there's a lot of their propaganda, and they play a part in confusing people. But what is this situation? So we know, like for example, nowadays when we talk about the current issues, people only talk about the Zone 7, then what's actually happening before. So and there are also people who, I would say, they know a lot about these issues from reading, from information online and everything. But they somehow come into the conclusion saying that this is a very complicated and convoluted issue that we might have, the capacity to really understand it and solve it. So they just left it for the Arabs to settle it, or the leaders to settle it. But there are also people who have little information, but they believe that they understand it very well. So they come to a very simplistic conclusion. For example, some people say they say they read Quran, and there's verses in Quran saying that Allah did granted this land to Jews. They quoted the exact verse from the Quran, and I heard it not only from not from ignorant people, but from scholar, from actually. In university, I won't mention which university, but they do claim that, and we know from during the Abraham Accord, it's between it's signed by UAE in Bahrain. They are scholars, religious scholars, in UAE, using this verse to say that Palestine has to stop this resistance and just give up the land. So they come to that simple conclusion from this verse, which is actually there's a context with this verse, rather than a simple conclusion of that one. And there are people who say that this is a problem whereby this is Palestinians who are actually the one that caused all the trouble. They see the news with Palestinian throwing rocks, Palestinian being burned tires and everything. They say this is a reflection that Palestinians are the troublemakers, not the Israeli, who they say want to resolve this peacefully and everything. And these views, these images are very prevalent in the news. And in fact, if you ask Malaysian who went to visit Al-Aqsa Mosque, they say it's very settled. There's no trouble. The only trouble that they feel, they say, when the Palestinians are protesting. So they are saying that Palestinians are actually the one making the noise, the trouble. So these images are very troubling for people who really want to understand these issues. And then there are also those who are very lazy in their understanding of the issue. They say this is because of the disunity among the Palestinians. They have to settle it. Fatah and Hamas, they are quarreling among themselves. They are not united, so this is their problem. And there are some people who are very, very lazy, saying that, we just wait for Mahdi. And Mahdi will settle all this. So there are some people who actually, they know about this issue, but because of their perspective from different angle, they choose to somehow turn into ignorance on how actually we can make a collective effort to really put an effort to help the Palestinians in their struggles. So that's from my limited experience, but from my limited experience with the non-Muslim in Malaysia, for example, some of them are interested to know about Palestine, but due to some cultural, and they don't want to be associated with some sentiments, they choose not to get involved with it. So we have experience, for example, after October 7th, we want to do a big event in schools, awareness program in schools. Somehow they are resistant from the non-Muslim communities, saying that we shouldn't promote what they call terrorism. In fact, and then somehow unfortunately our education ministry, you know, uh, feel that pressure and ask us to slow down our campaign. And that it's a missing opportunity for us actually to explain what does the kafah mean, what does from the river to the sea means, why the Palestinians have to struggle and everything, have to resort to armed struggle. So we lost that opportunity actually to explain. So I believe that there's more effort need to be done to make sure that we can actually explain a little bit more about the disinformations and the ignorance that are happening in society.
Yeah, thank you, brother. That was going to be my next question. Actually, we realize the about ignorance, and resistance is considered terrorism. That shows that people don't understand. That is why, as you mentioned just now, when the school started this program and some children who carry guns, they became scared and they say that we should stop this program completely, saying that this is going to lead to terrorism. But as I was saying, if you have a Independence Day celebration in Malaysia, and then the country, they have no problem in our and problem with that. But suddenly when it comes to Palestine issue, they don't see anything. So that shows the level of ignorance So my next question is, how do we address this outdoor ignorance, widespread ignorance among some people? Some people are very aware now, but there are still pockets of ignorance in society. To ideas from maybe then Sunny and the center and some other people we can work to make people more aware of this ignorance among pockets of people in society. Go ahead, Tertiary.
Thank you, Prof, for this question. And I believe you already answered this question. So it is difficult to add a lot on what you have said, but let's say, my point of view, there are a lot of chances for us to educate people and to reduce the ignorance about the Palestinian cause. I believe the first chance for us is the nature of the Palestinian cause. It is just, simple, fair. What is the Palestinian cause? There are a group of the people, they were uprooted from their land and they were subject of ethnic cleansing and forcibly expelled from their land. They ask one right, the right of return. One, the main right the Palestinians claim or want to be implemented is the right to return to their homeland. So it is easy. And sometimes we have a joke. We say, instead of saying two-state solution, we have two return solution. We Palestinians do return to our homeland, and you occupiers, the settlers, do return to your homeland, to Europe. So it is easy. So I believe the first chance we got as activists and as who concerned with the Palestinian issue and the Nakba to know, to understand that it is a clear and simple issue, and this is number one. Number two, the second chance we have and the second opportunity, even it is very costly, but it is important. The steadfastness of the Palestinian people in Gaza, those who are facing and resist since 1948 or before 1948 till now. And now we have a very clear example of sacrificing, of heroism of the Palestinian people who are sacrificed their home, their land, their soul, their blood, their money, everything, their property, everything they sacrifice just in the way to liberate their country. This is one of the things catching eyes and make people know better about the Palestinian cause. For example, there is a novel was written by the Shaheed Yahya Sinwar. He wrote maybe more than 20 years ago. And it was printed one or two editions in Arabic only. After his martyrdom and after Israel assassinated him, when Israel itself posted and published the video of the late Shaheed Yahya Sinwar, how he was struggling and fighting Israel until his last breath, until he threw his stick. After this scenes, Israel published, just to undermine the image of Sinwar, the people saw him as hero that they want in their life. After that, I believe the most book published was his novel. I think its name in Arabic, Al-Ward, Al-Shawq wal-Qurunful, The Throne and the Claws. This novel, I think, translated to Turkish, to English, maybe Malay. I know in Indonesia, many countries it translated, and I saw many editions, a lot of editions in Arabic and other languages in South Africa, in Malaysia, and everywhere. There is an edition about this novel. This novel speaks about his life, means the story of Nakba. And this is a second chance we have to educate people and to reduce the ignorance. Number three, and I speak on my own experience, the teachers in schools, they have a great role to spread the awareness about the net. For example, I still remember till now, when I was 11 years, the teacher of mine, his name Ustad Abu Hanan, he was there. He took me from my hand to the library of, no, to the غرفة الناظر, to the room of principal room. And he brought one book of the Palestinian lands, his name Biladuna Palestine. It is like encyclopedia of Palestine, indicates all the villages, all the cities, all the history of Palestine, named Biladuna Palestine, in Arabic, in English, our homeland, Palestine. He said to me, Sharif, where are you from? From which village? Now I'm a refugee in Gaza. I said, I'm from Beit Baras, which is occupied, controlling it. He said, okay, let's search about Beit Baras. I said, oh, our village is named in this great book. He said, yes. And we can use alphabetic and find your village. Then it is in the page number 424. Then we went and we started to read about our village, about our history. So I felt a connection, a special connection about for the Nakba and our catastrophe. So the teachers, despite the challenges we will face from the groups, from those who don't like you to teach the Palestinian cause, but you find a way to teach about Palestine and to teach about the Nakba. Not necessary to announce this. You have many access. If you want to use geography, you can find Palestine. If you want to use human rights, you can find Palestine. You will find a space to speak about Palestine. If you want to speak in Islamic studies, find a place for Palestine. If you want to speak about Jesus alayhi salam, Sayyidina Isa, you will find space to speak about Palestine. If you want to speak about politics, you will find a place for Palestine. If you want to speak about communication and media, you will find. Even the medicine and medical sector, you can speak about Palestine from this sector. So, there is not that there is an ignorance, and there also a lot of chances and opportunities for us to educate people and to make the Nakba is not a simple event. No, it is a critical and it is a landmark of the humanity history.
So the question were what we can do to reduce the ignorance. I think that the main issue to reduce the ignorance nowadays is education, which is the most powerful lever we have so far. So what we need to do, we need to actively reclaim the narrative of the Palestinian people, incorporating Palestine into schools, university curriculum, especially in history, international studies, media studies, and the curriculum for schools, for the university students, for the staff to read and to know more about Palestine, raise that awareness. One more point, which is also interesting about supporting Palestinian voices. Academics, writers, journalists, by publishing, translating, and amplifying their works and their voices. Organizing public forums do some kind of film screening, art exhibition, lecture that contextualize Palestine not as a humanitarian crisis, but as a moral and political issue. Interestingly, also we can use the social media nowadays, which is a very, very powerful tool. We can utilize social media and platform to disseminate historical truth and daily realities of the state and be bypassing the mainstream media censorship. So education not only in this sector or in this realm of increasing the awareness of Palestine, but also we need to mobilize knowledge, which is very, very important. We need to mobilize knowledge among the people who are not aware about what's going on in Palestine. That leads to action. So mobilizing knowledge, we can lead more action from mobilizing knowledge, not only for education. So we need to have some kind of conferences, events, forums, and movies. Also, we need to incorporate, as I mentioned, Palestine in some of the university curriculum, in some of the schools curriculum. So our new generation can understand what's Palestine, what's the history of Palestine, what is going on in Palestine. So I think by doing this, we will be able to negate the ignorance from the people, and we will be able to raise the awareness among our nations.
But the valid ideas of how to give that.
I would agree with the brother Akat saying that we need to reframe the narrative and reclaim the narrative. And I believe that this has started already. In terms that before this we talked about occupations, now we're talking about not only occupation, we're talking we reframe it as a settler colonialism. And I do believe this is very important. And BDS play a big part on this one. And I read a book on the works by our partners in India, in the way they try to explain to Indians how closely related their struggles and independence against the British. And similarly with what Palestinians are now struggling against Zionists. And I do believe, like we mentioned earlier about we Malaysians have a problem to understand between terrorism and resistance. So I do believe that we need to maybe write or make a work on how we explain our history and try to relate it to this Palestinian struggle. I do believe that our youngsters are now, so we have, how many years from independence, they are not really, we could say ignorance about what struggles about during the British occupations. And we see the euphoria when the film, what we call Mark with it. It happens, I mean, somehow it struck the society about really understand what's that's living under occupations under colonialism. So that's one thing. So that I think make us to put an effort on how to produce films or movies about what's happening in Palestine. And I know there's some work done by Zaituna Research Institute on explaining not only about the struggle, but the struggles of the people. So they have a series of publications, which I believe can be simplified and can be, in writing in a way that people can really relate to it. For example, Dr. Sharif mentioned about novels written by Yahya Sinwar. So I've actually been approached by Dr. Mazli years back. He said that I want to translate this book. He said that why you publish this academic rather than novel, because novels are more, people can relate to it. So he said you need to translate more novels rather than this academic book. So that's what he asked. He told me years back. So I think we need to take that data, the ideas, which more novel and Consul did a great job on terms of sharing the struggle of the prisoners. It's very important. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So this publication by Zaytuna, not only have publication on the stories about prisoners, but also about the patients, about women, about children, about those people living behind the wall, the apartheid wall, and people the environment in Palestine. Those are suffered because of the things that Israel do or that pollute all the environment in Palestine. So on students, on workers, so all this segment of people in Palestine, if we can manage to relate it to all Malaysians, I do believe that more people will come out to really support Palestine. They say if they are doctors, they are more related to medical aspect of it. If they are engineer, they are more related of how Israel construct settlements in the West Bank, how they actually doing that to to oppress the Palestinians. So and students and everything. So I think we need to approach the issue in Palestine in terms of understanding what the people experience. I think that people can relate. And I've met one lady who worked on publishing a series of comics to explain to students about what happened in Palestine in Gaza, and she's very brilliant. I think all these comics actually set out, and then I think now she actually going into short movies. No, not movie animations based on the comics. I think we can help on that one. So because on the larger side, on the larger public, we talk about reframing the narrative. But on the young generation, I think it's important for us to approach them and tell them about the real story. And hopefully, in few years, we can have a young, maybe if environmentalists they have great talent, we can have these young leaders from Malaysia or from our regions to talk directly and bravely about these issues in the international platform. So yeah, I think that's can be done and should be done to make sure that people can really relate to the cause in this problem.
Well, nowadays I stay away from novel because it's fiction, right? Real stories. Not necessarily academic can be very boring because people framework, etc. But true stories.
Yeah,
For example,
yes, yes.
public the true stories of people. That's it. And make based in this. Based in this. Novel one.
Yes, I read Clark. He starts to speak about the 1967 occupation and his life in the camp and yeah,
Story about himself.
yeah. He hides himself, but he has reflect his personal experience.
Okay. But after after the talk, then the problem of ignorance began to affect. In other words, of course, there's not completely related people like women. But many people now are aware, America, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people now are very aware what's happening, what has happened, what's happening in Gaza, and that's why we students and public visualize encampment, people willing to fight authorities and pick up universities because of their manners. So in other words, the governments are started. I guess it so actually has really changed the story as far as ignorance is concerned. However, we see that in Malaysia and some other countries, Arab countries, that activism is missing, not the same as in America. In America, people are compared to what I was in the 80s. Nowadays, you see people are demonstrating and they go all the way to the Congress, Capitol, to go right in the building and protest. In other words, activists really high level. Over here, even though they are aware, they are not doing anything. So they seem to be indifferent. So this is why we are indifferent and for indifference. So we still are witnessing very high level of indifference among members of the society, especially in Malaysia. I'm not sure about the other countries, but they seem to be also quite quiet, except for the government. Yeah. Okay. But some other countries are doing much. So what can we do to make people act more? We need action now because people are being killed every day, right? This latest news is under to find kill.
Yes, yes,
Is it and nothing is being done about it until today. So what make people do something? Act. Okay.
Thank you. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. I think to mobilize people who aware to move from the square of the circle of where aware to active. It needs efforts from those in the circle of activism to bring them from knowing circle only to knowing and action circle. So it is not easy. So I believe we need three things or three strategies. Number one, to always remind them, those aware but they are not active. This is not a local issue. It is not a regional issue. No, it is a global issue. When you be part of this struggle of Palestine, you are entering the level of international cause. The Palestinian cause is not, as I said, a regional. No, it is a freedom issue. It is a humanitarian issue. It is a global issue. Anyone involved in this, he serves his nation. He serves the globe. He serves the humanity. So I think this is part of encouraging people to involve more actively in the Palestinian issue. And this should be struggle, long-term struggle. We should always do activities and invite others to be involved in such program actions for Palestine freedom. Number two, I believe we should keep in mind and action. In some countries and in some areas, to be activist for Palestine is costly. How? Some lobbies maybe fight you, against you. The government maybe strike you from your job. The fund will be cut if you receive fund. Maybe you brought to courts. So, to be activist for Palestine, it is not easy. And it will be costly for you. So, I believe the second strategy we should follow is always to protect those involved in Palestine struggle, legally, morally. Every time we support them. Because I know many of those who decided to shift from knowing circle to action circle, they lost. So those, when they lost, we should support them. We should protect them also. For example, when he arrested Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian activist, and other activists, they are arrested, and there is an American lawyer, he defending them. So when you provide them protection, you encourage others not to be worried if they involve in Palestine struggle. Number three, in my point of view, we should always appreciate those involved in such struggle, because it is a psychological need for activists. They need to be appreciated. They need to be figures. Why not? Those who are leading the international movement of solidarity with Palestine. It should be figure. Not only the singer should be figure. Not only the movie stars should be figure. Not only corrupted politicians should be figure. No. Those fighting for Palestine should be figured, should be appreciated, and should always keep them in the focus to each people. Then people will be encouraged that when they involve Palestinian struggle, they will not lose 100%. They gain a lot of respect of their self, respect of their struggle. They are struggling not for a cheap cause, no. They are struggling for a very pricey and very great cause, honorable cause. This is my thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. Dr.
This very interesting question. The question within by the way. So the question was, I think, why do people stay passive despite knowing that what is happening on the side? I think it's a kind of it's a mix, fear, fatigue, and helplessness. Some people fear political backlash or being labeled anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic. Others feel emotionally overwhelmed and paralyzed. So they are not willing to see the movies, they are not willing to see the TikTok videos because they are very emotional and they don't want to cry when they see a ton but some people are being killed or wiped out. So they said they refrain from watching these videos because they are not interested and they are emotionally overwhelmed. This is number two. Number three of those people who are unfortunately they are indifferent because Palestine is not seen as their issue. It's not their issue, so they don't care. So what we have to do, we need to humanize the struggle in Palestine, not only politicize it. People in Palestine, they are being killed, not because they are what we call not because they are fighting for others, but because they are fighting for their own dignity, for their own land, for their own life, for their own freedom. So Palestinians are not just victims. They are doctors, they are artists, they are people, they are family, they are scholars, they are journalists, and they are dreamers, same like all other nations. We must dismantle the myth that nothing can be done. Actually, there are many things that can be done, and we can do many things. So people must know that every act of solidarity counts, from protest to policies, from prayers to petition. So supporting Palestine is anything you can do, you can support Palestine. By prayers, by politicizing, by creating or generating policies, by inviting others to talk about Palestine, by speaking, by giving narrative about Palestine, by watching and supporting Palestinian movies, Palestinian videos, by generating, by sharing the Palestinian movies and the stories. So there are many things that can be done about Palestine. By speaking in your community, with your students, with your family members about Palestine, about the Palestinian narrative. There are many things that can be done about this. So the most important point is we need to humanize Palestine, not only just politicize it. So that the reason why the people, they cannot fear to be targeted or labeled as anti-Semitism or as a terrorist or supporting terrorists. So at the first place, Palestinians are humans, same like all other nations, and they are defending their own country, they are defending their own freedom, dignity. So we have to humanize this cause in order to be able to advocate for Palestine and be able, inshallah, to liberate Palestine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Khalid, can we hear your opinion about it?
All right. I do believe we have to learn from our friends in the West in terms of mobilizing people, and they have very good model that we can follow. And if you look at our friends in the West, actually when I believe when we invite Anna Bolter, and one of the things that she is influenced in Malaysia is that everyone is like supporting Palestine. And as if we are doing a bigger thing than that. And what I realized in the West, if they did let's say an action in front of a mall or in front of office, something they are targeting. Even though they are small in numbers, they just do it. There's nothing to be ashamed or afraid of. So one thing that when I look into how they did their mobilizations, first thing is they have a very clear guidelines to those who want to participate. So sometimes they can have a small event in their own region, but they ask other people to actually replicate that in other places at their own capacity, and they have a clear guideline there, and they have usually have a and guideline on how you can replicate this to at your own universities or schools. So that's one thing. So we need to have guideline. Some people want to participate, they know how to. And sometimes they are far away from us, but they want to contribute. So how they can do that? So guideline is the first one. Second one is we need to have a program that are scheduled, meaning no matter how small our team is, we need to have a programmable actions that people can participate. And usually when people participate in one actions, they want more. And our problem is we cannot create the second one because we are tired already. Maybe because we are doing everything in terms of the awareness, the campaign online, and the physical program. So often we can have a team that focus on the actions, but whereby if people participate in it, they want more. And we need to have this trust in them so that we can delegate this task also to them. So not to say that they are new, so they cannot participate, they cannot organize. No, people are actually happy to help and to organize things. So trust them and delegate to them if they can do this from time to time. And of course, one of the things that they do is they usually do what they call a workshop whereby after one actions, they try to how to think about how to improve these actions so more people can come, or our messaging are clear, or our coverage are more wider and everything. So they do sit and think about what next. So that's what happened. So and we need to do that. And they say if you see our friends in the UK, they sometimes have regular what they call teach-ins. So people participate in this event. They talk about what need to be conveyed to the people, why we do this, why this is important, why you need to participate in it. And the other thing is, I think it's very important for us to share our success stories. This is some of the things that people are really helpless because they think these actions are not bearing any result, any effects. So we need to tell our success story no matter how small it is. Because people will say that there is something that I can do. So we need to share our success stories to people so that people can see that this is not something that it's just nothing, no impact. It has some impact. So that's why one of the things that I learned from BDS is they don't have we don't know actually who actually the we know the founder, but we don't know actually who's actually the committee behind. They are very secretive about that one, but they don't care about that one. The most important thing is how the networks grow country to countries. And one of the encouragement by them is not only for activists for Palestine working only on Palestine, but for us to also help other causes, which can actually, when we have a team, they can come and support us as well. So that's why one of the criteria and one of the encouragement by BDS National Committee is for us to make connection with other movements. Like in the US, they have collaboration with the Black Lives Matters and the environmentalist groups and everything. So if we share this same sentiment about their cause, they will support us. So we need to enlarge our networks with other groups as well, which have the same kind of spirit in terms of fighting for the right things, for justice, and then that will help us, inshallah, to broaden our networks and our support for the yeah.
I think we probably and they
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
maybe okay, and then one question after this, because we have a big Q&A. We are online. And this one, in Malaysia, there are group that fight also the testing and for example, but it can be, you are talking about media and then talking about right in Malaysia. So we have to really discuss how to interconnect with other groups and other causes we have to understand the cause. We need to find further. But coming back to action starters, for God, BDS, yeah, we have success stories. Yuma decided not to continue with Israel because they lost a lot of money. And so far, yeah, this responsible. So there are many success stories. But in Malaysia, one of the arguments by some people that even though we are boycotting McDonald's, we boycotted, but Palestinians are being killed, they say. Thousands are being killed, meaning that boycott is useless as a strategy to fight against Israel, against the Zionists. So we may as well forget about boycott because it's not happening. And then they go back by burgers and that and some other stuff are not interested in boycott efforts anymore. So because they think it's not working, it's not effective. How do you respond to that? Or the question? Okay.
No. Actually, I believe people should understand that the target, the goal of BDS is not to liberate Palestine. that the goal of BDS is to make the occupation isolated, to fight the occupation moral, to keep the occupation, to keep people always remind themselves that they have a responsibility towards Palestine. I believe if the people understand these goals of BDS, this will encourage them to not expect that BDS will liberate Palestine. I believe the most working way to liberate Palestine is to fight Israel and to prevent Israel to continue the genocide and to stop the genocide. Otherwise, and other means we use is just attempts to put obstacles in the face of this monster that killing people in mass and committing the genocide. And I believe the liberation should be the duty of governments. But we as social activists and activism groups, we should have our role. So our in boycott, it works, and it works very well. For example, when Israel feel it is isolated, they will sometimes recount themselves. They recount their policies. Maybe they stop some atrocities against the Palestinian people. So I believe we should do always. And if we need 100% success, it is difficult. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in his march to Da'wah and for calling Islam to Islam, he didn't achieve 100% because a lot of people continue not non-believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should not always expect more than people need, or the targets or the nature of this movement. If people understand this, I think they will return to practice boycott. We should always remind them, when you support BDS activities and you obey BDS campaigns or you involve in BDS campaigns, you something from your side to be clean. You should always keep yourself clean, involving in any activities, or even it is so far not direct related to the blood of the Palestinian people. That's it.
Thank you, very perfect. So how do you see this? How do you respond to the people who say boycott doesn't work?
I think for boycott are not a short-term tactic, it's a long-term ethical commitment. So the same was said about the anti-apartheid in South Africa. So it was a crucial factor in bringing the international pressure and the isolation to the apartheid regime in South Africa, and finally made liberation in the South Africa. So for those who dismiss boycotts are either misinformed or unwilling to give up convenience or to leave their comfort zone. So the purpose of BDS is not only economic, it is moral and symbolic. It says we refuse to normalize genocide and we refuse to fund occupation. It's very simple. So in Malaysia, for example, if Malaysia with its large Muslim population says it won't financially support complicit corporation, it sends a powerful message to the Israelis and to the all complicit governments. Boycott may not stop tanks overnight, but they can build a global awareness, shift public discourse, and force companies and government to rethink about their alliance with the occupier, with the occupation. So what we can see here, Palestine is not a just place. Palestine is a principle, and we have to take action. As human beings, we have to take action, whether to be on the side of just or on the side of unjust. So this is our rule, and this is our principle.
Thank you, Dr. Khan, for Dr. Khan's response. Me as a general BDS,
Yes.
we want to also say that we are not only boycotting restaurants, we are also calling for boycott of companies supplying weapons, bulldozers to the Israeli army. Unfortunately, government, etc., are not supporting it. If imagine if governments around the world stop big companies stop buying Caterpillar bulldozers, Caterpillar will stop supplying Israel because they're going to lose a lot of business. So I would say that one of the reasons is because we are not doing enough when it comes to boycotting. But anyway, I want to ask for. Go ahead.
All right. I think there's a disconnection between the expectations of boycotting McDonald's and hoping that the war will end, because it's not connected directly. Like Prof mentioned just now about among BDS main target is the companies who supply weapons and corporation investment companies that invest in weapons productions. So should be, if you want to end that, that should be the main targets. And of course, these targets are only relevant and applicable to countries who buy this, not people, not customers, regular customers, but countries. That's why BDS has the element of sanctions. This is the role of the countries. Of course, you can pressure on it, but at the end, countries need to take the actions. So I think in order to bring back the direct expectation for people who boycott McDonald's, KFC, Pizza Hut, is to tell them what's actually the end target for this, the end objective of these targets. So different targets where we have different objectives in terms of what we want to achieve from that campaign. And of course, at the moment, after the October 7, BDS has not only talked about the targets, but there's a main targets, there's a pressure targets, there's a grassroots boycott. So there are now different layers, which of course will requires different approach and different strategies in order to achieve the targets. So I remember that when we do our first BDS conference, there's a presentation by Sama Sabawi, and she explained about the framework of SMART in our campaign to make sure that our campaign must be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Has a time-based plan. So I think for every target we need to have this to make sure that people's expectations are the right one. So you cannot expect you boycott manual and the bomb will stop. No, the bomb will not stop. But boycotting manual has a specific target. Why we do that and what we want to achieve from that. So if we can explain that, I think people can relate to it and understand why we have to boycott these companies. Well, of course, people expectation need to be managed, and our campaign, if like I mentioned just few minutes ago about our success stories. Success story is very important. It's why BDS is very keen on highlighting every success story from every country, from every BDS chapters, to make sure that we make sure people know this is a global movement, not we on our own. Now everyone is doing it. Of course, sometimes October 7 boycott has been very popular, and we need to grab this opportunity for people to keep trusting and know that boycott can make a effect and make a dent on Israeli economies, especially at the moment. So all the information from BDS International, we need to share it to make it as a, this is also our cause. We contributed in this cause, and of course, in terms of the solidarity, if we can make this as our contribution to the global efforts, I think people can appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. It's another success story we want to share the campaign against Zings. When we started the campaign, we ignited the campaign actually on Zings. After 5 days, the Malaysian government, Prime Minister announced zinc ships were not allowed to dock with patients. And it became a global news. And there was a lot of pressure on the Indonesian government by Indonesians. If Malaysia could stop zinc ships, why couldn't the Indonesian government do the same? So works actually, but just people didn't realize it. State that the American government passed laws for BDS activists. That's true that activities they had to resort to laws, ban BDS activities and activism camp officers in America. All right, we have come to the end of the first round, of the round of comments by our panelists. Now we want to invite questions from the audience, either physically or online. So anybody here, the audience who wants to comment or give question, you are most welcome. Hope somebody will something. I'm not going to start first.
Suggestions by Ali Jimat, where you mentioned someone who wrote comic, because it's true actually, stories can reach people better. A lot of people don't like to read academic books, maybe myself included. So we like to read stories, and I think turning maybe some of the stories into comic books would be quite effective. I can imagine how it would reach the younger set, like things fast and visual. So that was a good idea. Should pursue.
Comment or any question from any of the people present here? Silakan. Open the panel. Panelists.
We should have forgotten that.
Nothing. No comment. Question? Yeah. Comment, question. Comment.
Assalamualaikum. I think I just want to say that I think just myself, I'm kind of late to the party as well. So I started reading more, watching more about the Palestinian cause in the last few months. But I think for me, what has been especially powerful was showing, or rather seeing videos and reading about the stupidity of the Zionists and the cruelty of the Zionists. So as much as learning about the painful things that are happening to the Palestinians, the stupidity of the Zionists is also really just opened my eyes. And I think that narrative is very important. And the recent BBC show, yes, the settlers, yes, it was really eye-opening to see how just, uninformed they are or brainwashed they are. And also, I thought what Francesca Albanese said, the special rapporteur she said that in one of her interviews, I can't remember which interview, but she said that the interviewer asked her, "You're willing to risk so much by speaking so openly about this problem?" And she said simply, if this was happening to you, you'd want me on your side, someone like me on your side. So I think that's something that people need to realize, that if Malaysia was bombed, they would want activists on their side to speak about the injustice happening. So um, I guess it's how whatever they say, whatever comes out of their mouth, sounds like they haven't read any history, that they think that everything started on October 7th, that they're just not, like, all this history and information are not accessible to them, or the movement to convince them that the Zionist movement is correct is just really powerful, and they're not needing anything beyond that. Sorry, so that's I meant.
Question. If there is, I will now ask an additional question of 10 minutes. We mentioned about the very important targets other than the restaurants. Companies that supply weapons. Companies like Boeing, Caterpillar, and then you have the IT companies that work with Israel. HP, Meta, then you have also Microsoft. We saw what happened to the ladies who lost their job. One resigned, actually, because they protested against Microsoft for taking Israel for artificial intelligence. So these are major companies. Unfortunately, governments seem to be very scared when it comes to any ideas, any opinion, why, what can be done. I open this also to the floor if you have any idea, opinion about this matter. For example, Boeing supplies weapons to Israel, but now governments are still ordering doing business, want to expand business with Boeing, as if that there's the fact that Boeing supply weapons Israel are killing Palestinians by tens of thousands. Business as usual.
Yeah, I think not many Malaysians actually aware of that. There's a plan. So I remember when earlier when we use when we especially is on its early stage. What we do is we try to approach the government, but it's kind of they dismiss a lot of our. So what we do is we approach the pembangkang, the opposition MPs, so that they are carrying these issues to the parliament. I think of course we do have channels to inform our member of parliament from the government about these issues, but I think we shouldn't limit our channel to that. But if we can have other parliament members from the opposition bring this issue forward, we should do that. And I think with more noise, this could work. At least put the government on something that, let's say they announced we will do that they, just for time being until the genocide ended. That's actually a very good achievement. So we need to clear target on what we can do, and don't limit ourselves to just the. I know because some of us may have some reservation in terms of the political side of in Malaysia, but I don't think we should limit to that because of the situation in Ghana. So we should use all our channels that we have to bring that issues. But I don't think, and then they say for even for me, I'm not sure. I do heard about Malaysia buying new Boeing or ordering new Boeing um, airplanes, but I'm not sure how much, how many. And let's see, when the issue of BlackRock happens, we know beforehand, and then the opposition MPs bring this forward. But about this thing, I'm not sure we know very particularly about the details of this purchase. We can do that, and then we can spread it around. I think people might can relate to that and what can really support us in launching the
Yeah, that's what stated the I just want to comment for close. After that, what's remind me to talk about. But governments actually respond to people, and they have they know what are important issues for the people. But from what I observed in Malaysia, they sense that Malaysians are actually not concerned about money in their pockets, in their jobs, more than humanitarian issues in unified time. When it comes to elections, I will not vote you because you didn't have the job. You get jobs. That's why for the Trump, he lost last time, then Biden lost also because he couldn't solve the economic problem with the Americans. So governments all over the world know that at the end of the day, economic issues are more important than human among voters. And that is the reason why they are prioritizing economic issues more than humanitarian issues. In other words, if we want government to change their policy, the people should change their attitude. They should put the humanitarian issue, human rights first, above their prosperity issues. Once they prioritize accordingly, and government knows their priority, how the vote is vote, then they will respond accordingly. In some countries, people are willing to die because of colonization. So the government will work together with the people. That's what we are witnessing in Gaza. Actually, people in Gaza, they don't care about economic issues. They care more about their freedom. Yes. But self-determination. This is why the leaders are willing to work together with the people. So the leaders are reflection of the people. So if the leaders are more concerned about economic issues, it's the reflection of the people who have the same issues. So therefore, we call upon
People are full the will of their kings.
So that is not a democratic country. In a democratic country, the leaders follow the people. So we all together must educate people in Malaysia, especially with human rights issues for their own welfare. That they need to learn the spirit of sacrifice economic prosperity and welfare for the purpose of human rights and to help others. Okay, thank you very much to our panelists for your time contribution. Thank you to the audience for participating for coming here and some panelists. Before we end, I just want to remind again everybody that tomorrow we have big protest. Inshallah, probably one of the biggest so far among NGOs. Among NGOs, we have more than 30 the NGOs who are participating endorsing this protest tomorrow. 50, beginning at Tabung Haji Building, marching to British High Commission, and then after that we will go to the American Embassy to show our solidarity with the Palestinian and our disgust these two governments for being complicit in the genocide in Gaza. So I hope you can spread the word around. You can go to the BDS website, get the details, and spread it, forward the news to your friends and relatives, so that as many people as possible can turn out. This is the minimum we can do to show our solidarity with the Palestinians. Thank you again for